Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Peter Bedford MP, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing? You well?
Good, yeah, good.
You're down here for like a day to set up a staffer and then you're straight back up to the constituency and you're going to go on holiday.
Yeah, exactly. So I came down yesterday, set up my new member of staff, seeing you guys today, and back up tomorrow, some engagements in the constituency, and then hopefully have a bit of a break next week in sunny Portugal.
Ooh, very nice. Bit of sun. Is that your usual holiday destination?
I've never been to Portugal before. So my partner and his family booked a place out there, and I thought, do you know what? I deserve a break. I'm going to go away for a few days. So yeah, absolutely. Going to make the most of hopefully the last bit of summer before we come back in September.
Right, let's go back to the beginning then. Let's talk about Peter Bedford prior to being an MP. What did growing up look like for you? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, so I grew up in Northamptonshire. So I grew up. My mum was a single parent, so I'm the eldest of 3 children, and it was tough. I didn't have a dad around, and I guess I took on that kind of father figure role with my 2 younger brothers. So it was.
You were the oldest.
I'm the eldest. Yeah, eldest son, and it was tough. My middle brother Paul, he's got some quite challenging health issues as well. So she had quite a tough time bringing up 3 boys on her own. So, just the really basic stuff like making ends meet, like at the end of the week, not having enough money to put in the electricity meter, or having to not go on school trips because your family can't afford to go on the school trips. Stuff like that. I think, do you know what? This stuff needs to be, overcome. We need to help people that are in really tough circumstances like I had.
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a town called Rushton in Northamptonshire. Went to the local secondary school, and it was a reasonable school. It was I really enjoyed my time there. Actually, really enjoyed my 6th form. It was a great place to be. Made some great friends. But yeah, all walks of life, different people, different backgrounds. You had some really affluent people and some really people like myself that came from single parent families. So a broad spectrum of people.
So at what point in this journey did you realise you were a Conservative?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, some of my best friends growing up were Labour people. They were people that had different views to me, and that's how I've kind of adopted.
Are you is your family a staunch Labour family?
Do you know what? My family aren't really political.
Okay.
Like, so my grandmother had quite a big influence on my life because my mum was a single parent, so she had a lot to do with my upbringing. She wasn't necessarily political, but there were party political, but there were things that she would kind of bring on our upbringing. So she was really passionate about saying, a society is reflected by how it treats its older people and how it treats people that've got disabilities. And, so I think it's just those kind of values that got instilled in me when I was growing up, and I kind of took forward.
And that was through sort of discussions at the dinner table, or just day to day, sort of your sitting you down and sort of talking to you about
day to day stuff. So I say my family aren't really party political. And certainly my mum's not party political. My brothers are not political at all.
Have you taken them to Parliament yet?
Well, we've just set a date. So obviously been really busy. So they're going to come down in September and visit, and we're going to give them a tour and take them around and show them where I work. So yeah, we've just got that sorted. But yeah, and I guess it's values based really. That's how I got involved. And then as I joined 6th form college, I kind of became more politically aware, and I thought, right, okay.
Was there anything that drove that in particular? Like you're suddenly becoming more politically aware and engaged in politics?
I think there were certain issues at the time. So I think when I started to get involved, Tony Blair was the Prime Minister. So there was lots of stuff going on at that time around tuition fees. There was stuff around, there was like a fuel crisis at the time with blockades going on. There was stuff going on with the European Union in terms of new countries joining. And so there was lots of different issues that were kind of coming up. I was like, do you know what? What do I think about those issues? And do I agree with the government or do I not agree? So I was doing my own kind of, research, but just becoming more aware of those issues. And the more I looked at it, the more I looked at what the different parties believed in, it kind of drew me to the Conservative Party in terms of, trusting people to make more decisions over their lives rather than the government to make those decisions, having aspiration. People should have aspiration to do better for themselves and their communities. And I saw those as Conservative values, and I guess that's what drew me to the Conservative Party.
Because it's quite a big step to go from being interested in politics and like talking about politics to then actually getting involved in politics, canvassing, or getting involved in a party in particular. Were there any formative experiences or moments which you can look back to and be like, that's what tipped it for me to actually to start getting involved and getting my hands involved in the actual party machine?
Yeah, there was. So at that time, we had a really active local candidate, parliamentary candidate in the constituency, and I was meeting more councillors, local activists, and I was like, you know what? I'll go along and see what's going on. So I went along to a canvassing session. I started canvassing. I was only probably about 15 at the time. Started canvassing with some quite experienced councillors, a lot older than me. And you know, I really enjoyed it. I actually really enjoyed getting on the doorstep, talking to people.
You were a proper young Conservative.
I know.
So you've really come up from the ranks. At
Not
15.
quite Tory boy. Not quite the Tory boy from Harry Enfield, but I was young. I was young when I got involved.
Because that is quite unusual though, right? Even for a 15-year-old to be involved in canvassing and campaigning in politics feels quite young. So what was driving you to do that? Because you must have been very different from your friends.
Do you know what? When I reflect back on it now, I think when I mentioned earlier about my upbringing, I think part of that is due to that, because you know I had to grow up quite quickly. You know, I had 2 younger brothers that you know I was kind of helping support and give some guidance to. So I guess I had to grow up faster than my peers, really. So there's a bit of that I think that kind of caused me to maybe get more politically aware earlier than most people would do. I can remember once, so the first general election I campaigned in was 2001. It was bizarre because the Conservatives had, you know, were still in opposition, but they weren't still the flavour of the month for the public. And I can remember we went to this one estate, and I'm not going to name names, but one of the councillors said to me, "That guy's got a gun." And I was like, "What?" You know, look to my left. I was like, "No, he hasn't got a gun." Anyway, we got it. We got in the car. Next thing I know, this guy was firing air rifle pellets at our car. You know, literally, it was like the Wild West. I was like, I cannot believe this happened. You know, this is just absolutely surreal. And I didn't feel scared at all. Actually, it was more like, wow, I can't. You know, this is like, is this politics in Britain in the 21st century? It was really bizarre. It was a really surreal experience, and everything. I tell that story every time, and we still tell today that, you know what, things can get a bit rough in politics, but you know, you get these bizarre moments where you think, I just can't believe that happened, you know.
Getting chased down the road with someone shooting an air rifle at you.
Yes, that was a pretty bad day.
I mean, that feels pretty intense. But that was the thing that you were like, yeah, I could get a bit more.
Clearly,
a bit more of this.
Clearly, that attracted me to politics here. Yeah. No, but those kind of incidents are kind of like, you know, they're rare. They don't happen every time you go canvassing. It was like it's a story now, isn't it? I mean, I'm telling you the story.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre thing, and you know, no one canvassing session is the same as the other. You know, you can meet all sorts of people, all walks of life, different issues, some really interesting people, some really boring people, and it's great. And actually, I fully recommend if someone is really interested in getting involved in politics, to go and knock some doors with, you know, a political party, because it really gives you that insight into what people are thinking.
Let's talk about university. So you were the first person in your family to go to university. I assume it was like from a young age, I suppose you were academically interested in pursuing like further education in that way. Yeah,
I mean, my grandmother had a big impact in my upbringing, and she always kind of, you know, wanted to push me to go to university. She wanted me to get a career, and I guess, you know, to do well in life. And that was seen as at the time, and it still is, as a really good route to go down. So as I was doing my A levels, I decided, okay, what am I going to do? And I was always pretty good at A level with law, and I really enjoyed the subject. Thought, right, okay, this is something that I'm going to probably do at a degree level. So started looking around universities, and ended up going to the University of Leicester. I'm still in Leicestershire now, so obviously I went to uni in Leicester.
Nice.
And then I've stayed on in Leicestershire, and I'm now a Leicestershire MP. So that was really the start of a chain of events that I guess led to me being an MP in Leicestershire. So
nice. So you're a lawyer then?
No. So
you did law?
I did law. So yeah.
Sure.
So I finished my A levels, went to University of Leicester, did law degree, and then decided, you know what, I like law, but I don't like it that much, and I wanted to go into business and get some business experience. I guess at that point in my life, I knew that I was politically inclined. I was really interested in politics, but you know what? I thought I need to get a proper career. That's probably not the right way of putting it. I need to get an outside of politics career first. You know, I don't want to be someone that goes into politics, only ever done politics, and has no real world experience. So I was doing some research on different graduate schemes, and one of the schemes that really attracted me was the chartered accountancy scheme that a lot of the big four finance companies offer. So I was successful in getting a training contract with PwC, and I went onto their graduate scheme and did all the kind of on-the-job training, doing my exams, and qualified as a chartered accountant. So before being an MP, I have been a chartered accountant for the last 10, 12 years.
Interesting. So you say you wanted the experience before you got into politics, but I'm gonna take a jump here and assume that whilst at university you were heavily engaged in the student politics scene.
Do you know what?
You drifted in and out?
I was a drifter.
Okay.
I think the university politics scene, I was, I drifted in and out. I think I was still.
Well, okay, let's reframe this question. What did Peter Bedford look like at university? How would you describe the Peter Bedford of university? 20, 21 years old.
Yeah, so everyone knew I was a Tory, obviously. So that's a good and a bad thing.
Why would you say that? Did you carry yourself in like a stereotype Tory way? Or?
No, I don't think I did that. I just think that I was quite opinionated, and again, at that point in time, we still had Tony Blair as the Prime Minister, and he'd been in power for a while. So I had opinions on stuff that was going on nationally, and what the government at that time should be doing and wasn't doing. I got involved in some of the debates that were going on at universities. I think very big at universities. But I was still actually quite active back in Rushden, where I had lots of friends that were councillors, and I was helping them campaign. So I was. You were never a
councillor whilst at university?
So I was elected in my final month of university. It's a bit bizarre. So I stood for election to the district council in Rushden, my hometown.
And when was this? This would
have been 2007.
And what year were you at university then?
4 to 7. So 2004, 2007.
So you're at the end.
At the very end of my time.
So you're pretty politically engaged if you're running for a council.
I was. But maybe not on the university campus. So I was politically engaged, but I was probably a bit split. I was kind of travelling backwards and forwards between Northants and Leicestershire, and I really enjoyed what I was doing with the campaign. And so I stood as a candidate in my hometown. For part of my hometown in Rushden. And it was bizarre because I was elected unopposed, right? So I didn't even have to fight an election, which is bizarre. So at that point in time, the district council had, I think, 40 seats, and the opposition parties didn't contest about half the seats. So it was strange. I think it was because it was coming towards the end of Blair's time as Prime Minister. The Labour Party was in quite a bad way, and it meant that the Conservatives were in quite a buoyant position, and they decided not to contest the seat that I was standing in. So I was elected, if you like, I was quite shocked that I didn't even have to fight an election, which was it was my first election, which was bizarre.
So how do you think your friends would have described you during the university days, during 2004, 2007?
2004, 2007, they probably would have.
What would have been your reputation? Maybe not even. Okay. Were you a big name on campus, or were you?
No, I wasn't a big name on campus. No, actually, I wasn't a big name on campus at all. I think amongst my friendship group, I was obviously really opinionated. I always had something to say, and he likes a good row. Yeah, probably,
Did you enjoy a row? I
like a good argument. I like a good debate. I like a good discussion. And sometimes, I was well aware of it. I like to be devil's advocate. We're having a discussion on something. I might not agree with the reverse position, but I'll argue it just to get a bit of a debate going. Get a bit of discussion. So
just for the sake of having a bit of an argument,
just for the bants, just to get a bit of joshing going on. So I was always one to kind of not sit back and just be quiet and just. So yeah.
You've mentioned that Tony Blair was in power during this time, these very, very formative years. Was there any particular issues that you were particularly incensed with at the time? So you mentioned the fuel crisis. That feels to me that's like, that would be, it was inconvenient for everyone. But were there any issues that you really felt the Labour government were getting it wrong?
So I think the tuition fees was a big one as well. There was stuff going with tuition fees, and obviously I was about to go to university and all that stuff was going on. So that was really topical. So we were all, lots of students.
Tuition fees is a really big one for you.
Well, so So no, at the time I wouldn't say it was a big one for me. I would say I was interested in it because it was impacting me, and I could see it, and I could see it impacting other people. And as someone that, as I mentioned before, that come from my background, I was like, okay, well, to be fair, it hasn't put me off going to university because I viewed it as an investment. So I always viewed paying tuition fees. Back in my day, it was a lot lower than it is now, but I viewed it as, do you know what, it's an investment for the future.
The Lib Dems get the stick for this because they went straight up against a pledge that they made. But the Conservatives also whacked up tuition fees. Were you able to support that at the time?
Yeah, so obviously I wasn't an MP, or I wasn't really.
No, but you were clearly an active Conservative Party activist at that point. Yeah,
I would have been. I think I had a view. Well, I took the view. Sorry, that education should be affordable. So I think I was keen that whatever the tuition fees were raised to or introduced, it would always be after the events. There'd be no upfront fees because that would definitely put me off in terms of going to university. That it was value for money. I mean, I think at that point in time. So
it was a tripling of fees, pretty much. Were you able to support that? Could you stomach that? How it was done? And
I think if I go back at the time when that was introduced, I was pretty critical of it because it was, as you say, it was tripling the fees. It was a massive rise. Could the universities justify it? Could people? They could afford it because it wasn't paid up front, but still, the notion of taking on debt of 20, 30, 40,000 is a lot of, on paper, it's a big number, isn't it? So, I think certainly at the time I was very, very critical of that policy. I think you mentioned the Lib Dems in the coalition. I think it's a strange one because I was surprised the Lib Dems didn't have that as a red line because, after, 13 years of Labour government we had, the Conservatives, I'm sure, would have budged on that issue. In that coalition agreement.
Do you reckon?
Absolutely. And the fact that Nick Clegg's team didn't have that as a red line to me was like, wow, I'm almost certain the Conservatives would have found the funding in other areas to have supported the policy that the Lib Dems had in their manifesto.
Interesting, yeah, I suppose.
And it was quite damaging for them, wasn't it? It
incredibly damaging,
wiped them out. It wiped them out at the next election.
Until now.
And now they're back again.
We've got to university. What was Peter Bedford doing outside of studying incredibly hard, no doubt, for his degree and running for councillor in his final year? What else was Peter Bedford doing?
What do I do? So at university...
were you a big part? Did you party?
Yeah, we partied, yeah. There were bars in Leicester. One was called Zanzibar. And basically, we used to go there every week, a couple of times a week. And we end up calling it Examzibar because basically we were just going there to avoid, any study at all. And it's bad, and it's a bad pun. But actually, a lot of my friends from university did medicine, right? So it was strange. Actually, I was still kind of partying a little bit after I graduated. So obviously, I did a 3-year law course, and medicine's 5 years. So when I graduated in 2007, I still had friends that were basically still on 2 more years on their course. So I kind of stretched out my student life a little bit longer by having all these friends that were kind of like, trainee doctors doing their placements.
Because you stayed in...
I stayed, yeah. So I was dividing my time because I was a counsellor, you see, in
Got it, yep.
So I was kind of dividing my time between the two. And it meant that, it was a pretty tough time actually because, I was doing my training as a chartered accountant. I was... kind of a new counsellor. I was working all over the place with my new job, and it was really hectic. But you know what? I partied hard as well, and I think my early 20s were enjoying life. No, I really enjoyed life. I'm not going to deny that.
Outside of partying, what does partying look like for you? Is it rave until 4 a.m. or is it?
I've never been that kind of person. But we had lots of house parties. We had lots. Had lots of house parties and.
What are other pastimes that you do? Perhaps continue to do.
So I like to travel. I like to get about, travel around. I like to go. In the last few, this is the last few years rather than when I was a student, but. Really got into cruising, and it sounds like an old person's thing.
Say that again.
Cruising,
actually
on a ship, right? It sounds like an old person thing. I always old people do cruises. But you know what? I've had some of the best holidays on a cruise ship.
How did you first get into cruising? How did you first get onto a ship or a ship? I think it's not a boat. Yeah.
So a friend of mine, Steph. So we went to strange. So we went to uni together. We also went to sixth form together. So we were at sixth form and. just how life works out. We end up going to the same uni, so we've been friends for many, many years. And she went on a cruise with her family, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. She was like, "Oh, it was really good. I had a really good time. You should do it." I was like, "Well, that's old people. I'm not going to go on a cruise. I'm in my 20s kind of thing." And do you know what? She persuaded me. And we went to the Caribbean for a 2-week cruise, I would say 6, 7 years ago. And it was the best holiday I ever had because you got to see so many places in 2 weeks. You got to, you didn't have to worry about lugging your bags everywhere. You got to experience a little bit of everywhere and think, "Do you know what, I'm going to go back there one day." And actually the cruise ship was great because, of course it's skewed towards older people. But actually, no, I would say a third of the people there were like 20s, 30s, 40s. So it's not as stereotypically an older person thing as you think it is. I think younger people are doing cruises these days.
So if we don't find you on the green benches, we'll find you on a cruise ship in the Caribbean or somewhere.
If I've got time. I really wanted to go on a cruise this year. I thought I knew this year was going to be a tough year because I knew the general election was probably going to be this year, right? So everyone that was like, "Oh, do you want to come on a holiday this year?" I was like, "I can't come. I can't commit to anything. I can't book anything." So the whole year I've been saying, "No, I can't go on holiday." So, and sadly this year I won't be going on a cruise, but I would like to go on a cruise next year.
So we're now you're working, you're a councillor. At what point did you decide, have you always really wanted to be an MP?
Yeah, I mean, being honest, yeah, absolutely.
From what age do you think you were like, "I want to be an MP"?
I reckon when I first got involved in politics all those years ago.
Well, 15?
I reckon. If I'm being honest about it, I think I always knew that I wanted to go in to represent people, to campaign on issues, to be out in the community, to contribute. And yeah, I knew that one day, and I guess I had this focus of wanting to achieve it. And I mean, it's really, there's only 650 in the whole country. So to achieve it, it's like, is it really going to happen? Yeah, and there have been times in my life where friends have gone to me, "Are you still going to carry on?" Because, you can have ups and downs. You have ups and downs in politics and you make progress.
What's been your lowest down in politics then?
If I go back 5 years, I stood to be the candidate for another Leicestershire seat where I was a councillor, and I lost out in a nomination. I lost out to another candidate. I took that quite badly. It was quite a bruising experience. I was probably, in my view, the most local, the most hardworking candidate, but I lost out. And
why do you think you lost out on that one?
I think there's a thing about familiarity where too much familiarity can be a bad thing, I think.
What do you mean by that?
So at that point in time, I was the local chairman of the local Conservative Party, right? So as a local chairman, you have to make lots of decisions locally in the area, about candidate selections, about what campaigns you're doing, about disciplining people. If you've got a councillor that's misbehaved, you've ultimately got to make decisions that could end up with them having to do an apology.
So there was too much baggage.
I think so. I think so. So I think the local connection was good because it showed that I cared about the area. But at the same time, there's a bit too much familiarity where you've been around, you've had to make tough decisions, and therefore you've got a bit of a.
But then you stood in a seat that's right that is in your hometown again. So didn't you have the baggage this time around as well to be selected?
So the boundaries were redrawn.
Yeah.
So part of my constituency is overlapping with part of the council area that I represent on the local authority. So there's a bit of that, but there was also a bit of, do you know what? It's the neighbouring area.
Yeah.
So there was familiarity, but not too familiar. So I think that was a good thing.
So the boundaries being redrawn was really quite a good stroke of luck for you then.
Well, do you know what? In politics, luck plays a big part. As much you can work all the hours you can, put in the effort, the hard work, but luck, yeah, absolutely. Without those opportunities that just arise, you probably don't have the in. So my own example is Mid Leicestershire, the constituency that I represent. Notionally, it was called Charnwood before. It was a seat that had a Conservative MP. The Conservative MP there, under the new boundary, decided to switch seats. So he decided to go to Melton and Syston, which is a neighbouring seat. So that created a vacancy in Mid Leicestershire, an opportunity for someone like me to put their name in the ring. And without that, I might not be sitting here today.
How hard was it to be a Conservative candidate at this election?
Tough. Because even though on paper my seat was a safe Conservative seat, every single opinion poll that came out bar one, said that I was going to lose, right? So you're being told week in, week out, your constituency is going to turn to a Labour constituency. You're going to lose, right? Despite having a big majority on paper.
What were your emotions like during that election campaign in terms of, you must have been incredibly frustrated at the campaign, the national campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, be untrue to say that I wasn't frustrated. I was, like most candidates, I was frustrated through the campaign. There was stuff going on nationally that I couldn't change or impact. And, when some of these events happened, you're on the doorstep, knocking on a door, someone mentions something, and of course it's agitating. But my strategy, and I think it helped win. I think it helped win, was to focus on me. I mean, so all of my literature, pretty much, my emails were branded as my name and the constituency. It was blue, of course, for the Conservative Party, but it was about me.
That was quite common though amongst the election material. I mean, even where I live in southwest London, there was very little mention of Rishi Sunak on the campaign material, or even the Conservatives. It was a blue leaflet with the name of the candidate, and almost you had to search for the party that was in question.
Well, we'd been in government. I hadn't, but the party had been in government for 14 years. That it's a long time. People get tired. There was a lot of stuff going wrong. Let's be honest, in the last year or so. And my pitch to the electorate was very much, I am a hardworking local candidate. Regardless of what's going on nationally, you would have someone in me that would help shape the future. If that's in government, if we were going to win, great. If it's in opposition, I can help shape the future of the opposition and reset the party for the next general election.
Okay, so you're on the stage.
Yeah,
First, your name's called out.
Yeah.
I hereby announce that Peter Bedford is elected as blah, 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 blah. What did Peter Bedford do?
So you're giving an envelope, and with your name on it, you open it up, and it gives you instructions of what to do. So
oh really? You get passed. Who passes you the envelope?
The returning officer passes you the envelope, and even he hasn't seen what's in the envelope. He's handed to that by the parliamentary authorities.
Right.
And
so it's Parliament in Westminster literally send out all these letters.
All these letters to all the constituencies, and you open it up, and it gives you instructions on what to do next in terms of going down to Parliament, getting your security pass, getting your laptop, all those.
And can you do that pretty much immediately? If you wanted to, could you have got in a cab and gone straight down to Westminster and been like, "Let me in"?
Which I pretty much did. So on election day, so the results were Friday morning. I got home. And, I was still quite buzzing. I wasn't going to sleep. I tried to sleep, but it wasn't happening. Opened the envelope, and, it said you can pretty much go on the Saturday. And having spoken to a previous MP for another constituency, she advised me, she goes, do you know what? Go on the Saturday, because if you go on the Saturday, it's not as busy. And if you go on the Monday, everyone's there. You're going to be queuing for everything, literally, for your laptop, your pass. Go on the Saturday, get all your stuff sorted, and when you go on the Monday, you can be in a good position where you haven't got a queue.
I just love the idea of in Westminster there's being a queue of elected representatives picking up laptops.
Honestly, you'd be surprised. Most things in Parliament, there is a queue or a ballot, or
What's the? So you're in. You get in. You get your office, and you walk in to the chamber.
Well, I haven't got an office yet. You haven't got an office?
No. How have you not got an office yet?
No. So a lot of the MPs.
So
we're hot desking, right? So we're in one of the committee rooms. So each committee room has got a number of desks, hot desks for respective parties. So all the Conservatives are in one committee room. There's only 26 new MPs. So we're
like a political party WeWork or something, essentially.
Basically, yeah. And given the Labour landslide, they've got about 10 committee rooms, I think. So they've got lots of committee rooms where they're all hot desking. But yeah, so most of us new MPs haven't got an office yet.
When are you going to get your office?
That's a good question, and a question that many of us are asking our whip every day. And I'm hoping in the next week or so. That's what I'm hoping. But I've been hoping out for the last 4 weeks. So, yeah.
What's the weirdest thing about Parliament you've found just since being there for 7 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever?
The weirdest thing, but
the most surprising thing.
The most surprising thing is probably that most things are done by a ballot, a lottery. It really is. When you've got 650 MPs and you've got a debate that's a couple of hours, of course not everyone can speak. So you go and see the Speaker's office and you say, I want to speak in that debate. And literally your name is put in, well, literally in a hat, but it is put into a drawer. And you'll be they might draw 15 names as to the speakers they're going to call during the debate. And I guess it makes sense. There are lots of us that want to speak or contribute to a debate, and if everyone was to speak for 5 minutes, you'd be there for days and days just for one debate. So it's surprising in a way, but also not surprising. But it's just the way it operates. It has to operate like that.
Yeah. Who are your MP best friends, as it were? Who are the people you are closest to who are in Westminster? Are they all Conservatives, or are you a very crossbench man?
I've got friends in different parties. One of my friends in the Labour Party, he got elected in the West Midlands, and
who is that?
We were Josh Newbury. So we were talking before the election about. So look, it's bizarre, but it's highly unlikely we're both going to win our seats because. Just the way the electoral arithmetic works, and then we both get elected. So he's a Labour MP. We have good conversations about, almost like sharing our war stories from our own kind of campaigns and what happened and how, things were going. We don't really talk about policy that much, actually, funnily enough, which is good.
Do you think that's why you're friends?
Yeah, probably, yeah. And then on the Conservative side, the 26 of us that have been in the hot desk room, it's been quite good for
26 of you in one committee room.
Yeah, it's been quite good to actually get to know your colleagues, because if we had all had our own offices, we'd probably been a bit more isolated. So having us all together, where we're all working there, we're kind of getting our offices set up. We're finding out about each other's campaigns, what we're doing. It's been good for that. It's been good for building those relationships. The only Conservative gain at the election was Leicester East, which is again a Leicestershire seat.
Yeah.
Shivani Raja won that seat, and she just turned 30. She only joined the party last year. And we've really got on, and as Leicestershire MP, we've obviously got shared interests for the county, and I can see us getting on really well together, and we may even share an office. Who knows? You
have to share an office, so when you get an office, it could.
Well, I think there could be shared offices because the whip was asking, who's willing to share, and I thought, well, if we're willing to share, we should get a better office, right? So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what comes out.
Where would you define yourself in the Conservative Party?
So I hate to sit on the fence, right?
I'm not
going to sit on the fence though. But I would genuinely say I'm probably in between the two. But let me caveat that. I would say I've moved from the more traditional right wing of the party towards being between the two. I think if you'd asked that question 10 years ago, I probably would have been a bit more towards the kind of free market part of the party. And I still believe in free markets and trusting people to make decisions over their lives and right-wing economics and all the rest of that. But I would say between those two options you've given me, I would say I'm probably about in the middle of them.
So, okay, what is that? That is square.
It's a journey.
So just to confirm this, so back in the day when you were at university and when you were an early years councillor, you were towards the free market side of the party. So Thatcher is your hero.
Still is. But I would say I've become more pragmatic. I think my politics have become more pragmatic as I've kind of, I've had a career since then. So the last 10 years, I've had a career in industry. We've had all sorts of events going on. We've had COVID. I've been a counsellor. I've seen how things work in the real world. I think theoretically, absolutely, a lot of the free market reforms that the right of the party advocate are right. But I think you've got to apply that in the real world. And I think that's what brings me a bit more towards the centre.
Are you very traditionalist? Are you very progressive, to use that word in kind of caps, whatever that defines?
I don't like the word progressive because I think it assumes that if you don't believe in something, you're not progressive.
Well, how would you define the way you approach social issues then?
So I think that the government shouldn't be intervening in many social issues. It shouldn't be telling people how to live their lives. It shouldn't be, mandating what is right, what is wrong. A set way of living your life. So I'm quite relaxed. I'm quite liberal, I suppose you could say, in terms of social issues. So long as you're not doing any harm to yourself, to others, to the broader society, I think the state shouldn't be there to tell people how to live their lives. So I guess you could say I'm quite liberal.
Whilst you've been in the Commons and you've had a few weeks there now, has there been anyone who you've spoken to or passed to and been like, oh my God, it's that, wow, this person's amazing, this is my hero.
Do you know
I'm stood next to them.
I haven't. Do you know, it's surreal.
Or you felt tongue-tied when someone said hello. Any of that?
Do you know what? I haven't. I mean, the speaker maybe. Yeah. So
Lindsay Hoyle.
Yeah, Lindsay Hoyle. So I think a week in, the speaker had a really good reception in the speaker's house. All the new MPs were invited. We went along. We had a nice reception, and then we had a photo with Lindsay Hoyle and a brief chat. And I suppose I was a bit tongue tied, and it's like, wow, this I'm actually an MP. I'm actually an MP here, and with the speaker, and wow, it's just surreal. So I think that's the one example I can give of where I was a bit like, wow, I can't believe this is happening.
Do you think you've gotten over the fact that you're an MP now? There's no imposter syndrome. There's no kind of, am I really this?
Well, so people say to me, when you're in the chamber, do you not feel really nervous? And the honest answer is no. When I feel more nervous when I'm speaking in the council chamber than when I'm speaking in the House of Commons. I mean, I've only spoke twice in the House of Commons, by the way. So I think the fact that it's quite an intimate setting, it's quite small, it's the whole environment. And I was sitting there before I did my maiden speech thinking, I should feel more nervous than I do. And I was looking at the opposition benches and my own colleagues thinking, do you know what? I've got as much right to be here as anyone else. And I think that it was that mentality that basically gave me the confidence to say, do you know what? Yeah.
I've got
you do
this.
it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any pre-routines before going to speak in the Commons to get yourself in the zone, get yourself in the mood, warm up the vocal cords?
Well, so I don't want to drink too much because you have to dash out for the bathroom. But I think I like to get into a place where straight. I think the best speeches that I've given, I've only given 2 interventions in Parliament so far, but I've been a councillor for a long time before that. But I think the best speeches I've ever given are the ones where I don't over rehearse. I think it's authentic and it's more natural and it's better delivery if you know what you're going to say. Maybe you put some bullet points down and you deliver it from the heart. You deliver it authentically rather than having a scripted 10 pages of speech and just stand there reading. I think it just doesn't work. So, and also, I like speeches to be concise and to the point. There's no point speaking for 20 minutes on something and 5 minutes in you've lost everyone. Let's
go back to the political heroes, icons, influences.
I mean, you mentioned Margaret Thatcher. I mean, obviously, I'm going to say Margaret Thatcher because I guess the background, the aspiration. She came from quite a modest background as well. And she, social mobility was really important. Building up. So, of course, I'm going to say Margaret Thatcher in terms of inspiration. I think, you look around the world and I think that's the problem these days that there isn't probably as many people to look up to as there once were. Maybe if you go like 10 years, you had some quite inspirational people like a Barack Obama that was coming through. You had, obviously in this country, Tony Blair was, a different party to me, but he was clearly someone that had broken the mould because he refreshed the Labour Party. He was a fresh, younger, dynamic politician.
It feels like you bring up Tony Blair a lot. I feel like he was a big influence on you.
Well, do you know what? So
you might. I feel like you hate to love him in a way.
There could be some truth in that. I think there could be some truth in that. I think when I was a student and he was the Prime Minister, and obviously he was the personification of the Labour Party when I was growing up, I had lots to oppose. But when I reflect back on some of the stuff he did, do you know what? It was, he was quite moderate in a lot of the stuff he did. He in his kind of business reforms and in certainly from the traditional Labour point of view of being like tax and spend and all that kind of stuff, he was certainly more moderate. And I think, some people once said, he's the best Tory leader that the Tories never had. And there could be some truth to that. I mean, there was stuff that he did that I absolutely didn't agree with. But there probably is some truth to that. And that's why he obviously won, successive elections, because he could appeal to Conservatives and to his own base.
Okay, so let's talk about what you're going to be in Parliament doing for the next term. What are the things that are going on at the moment and the issues that are going on at the moment that you're going to be paying most attention to and you have the firmest opinions on and most resolute opinions on? Are there any particular issues that you're going to be keeping a particular eye on in the next years?
Yeah, I mean, so in my maiden speech, I mentioned social mobility. It's something that isn't really spoken about as much as maybe it should be. And also, social mobility just sounds really like, what the hell do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. What does that mean for you?
So it's what I mean is, aspiration, giving people a trade, a skill, enabling them to develop as a person, to get a career, to then get a house, a family, opportunities. All those things go back to, having aspiration in the first place and the opportunity to take them forward.
So, I mean, you've just drifted across a large number of departmental briefs there. Are there any particular things that you're going to be really focused on or really wanting to push ahead with and champion, really, as an MP?
Yeah, so apprenticeships and on-the-job training, I'm really passionate about those. I believe, I was the first to go to university, but I believe actually university isn't just the sole answer to upskilling people. I think, apprenticeships, we're crying out for trades these days. We're crying out for people to do, a carpentry, building, or joinery, all those kind of types of skills that we just haven't got because, and again, this is probably a criticism of Tony Blair, he had a target of getting half the 50% of the student population to university. Well, I think that probably pushed it too far because you'd have people doing degrees that perhaps didn't have the skills that would then link into those kind of vocational types of training. So I'm going to be passionately pushing vocational training and skills so that we can upskill our own people.
So do you think it's a good thing that a lot of students, I mean, even in the last few weeks when we're recording this in August 24, there's been a lot of coverage over the fact that people coming out of school are questioning whether university's for them. Universities are struggling to fill their spaces and clearings, becoming a very active option for people looking to maybe go for university. Is that a good thing in your eyes, in the sense that their generations are asking this question now?
I think it's right that they question. I mean, that's the whole part of going to university, having that enlightened view. Is this the right thing for me and for what we're on to go? And I think having greater opportunities to explore other careers and other vocational experiences is needed because, I said I went to university, I really enjoyed it, I did a law degree, went on to become an accountant. Well, actually, I probably could have gone to a vocational route. I could have gone to a local accounting firm, on-the-job training, not had the university debt, and done it that way. Well, that wasn't really explained to me when I was kind of growing up and considering stuff. So I think having those opportunities available and explaining them to students about their choices in life is really important, and I think that's something that the government needs to push more on.
So from a national legislature point of view, you're really wanting to be focusing on vocational qualifications? That's one of your big focuses?
Yeah, I would say that. But I'd also say that links into other areas. So, at the moment, or certainly for the last few years, migration's been a massive issue, hasn't it? In terms of the numbers and the pressure that brings on our services, and there's arguments for and against caps on migration, the number of people that are coming to the UK. But I think having those policies like the skills policy would help to support progress in those areas. So, for example, if you're
what does progress look like in those areas for you?
Clearly, in my view, having migration numbers of high hundreds of thousands is not sustainable. It's just not a sustainable position to be in. We haven't got the homes, we haven't got the healthcare, we haven't got the infrastructure to support that. So if you have a system that's supporting, homegrown skills, which I've just mentioned, some of those skills, then you don't have to necessarily then bring people in from other countries to do those skills. So the more people we train to be carpenters, to do plumbing, electricians, all those really core skills we need, it reduced the pressure on having to import those skills. And I think if we've got those skills internally as well in the country, it's also good for resilience.
That's generational change. That's not going to happen overnight. That's going to happen over many, many years, possibly decades. So in the short term, what's your contribution to that migration debate then?
Yeah, you're right. In the short term, you're not going to click your fingers and suddenly the skills problem or the migration problem sorted. But I think you can set the kind of plan in motion. So for example, I was at university last week, University of Leicester. I visited the Vice Chancellor and many of his leadership team, and one of the things they touched on was the fact that in the medical school there, the government caps the number of medical places they can offer. They can only offer 10 medical places to foreign students, for example, but the foreign students bring in a lot more of the money. So if simple policies like that were looked at and we said, do you know what? Absolutely great that we're having students come over from other countries. They're making a massive financial contribution to our universities. They're getting the skills, and they're helping to then hopefully be future leaders and future trainers in the field. We need to ensure that we're focusing on high-level skills like that. Previously, for example, before we left the European Union, there was, I would say, a lazy approach adopted by government where we'd say, do you know what, we need quite a large number of unskilled labourers. Let's just go to the EU. People welcome people to come in, do those jobs because British people don't want to do those jobs. That was quite a lazy thing, I think, in my view, to do, because it was not actually investing in the skills, jobs and skills to do those things. It was not incentivising British people to do the jobs. You know, we've got one of the lowest productivity in Europe in terms of our output. So I think government, by being complacent, I would say, and it's not just Conservative, it's Labour and Conservative governments over many years, has led to the problems that we've had in skill shortages, and that's something that I want to see addressed.
Because of the nature of your constituency, you're probably going to be around for a while. In terms of, let's hedge up, but you're not in a marginal seat, where there's not much in it. Let's say though you've only got one term of Parliament. If there is one thing you could contribute whilst you're an MP, where you got to the end of the term and you were like, that is the one thing I achieved, and I'm glad I did it. What would that one thing be for you?
Wow. So, I mean, this is a controversial one. This is a controversial one. So, in the last few years, I had family members, like many people have, that have experienced illnesses where they've been given a diagnosis that says, sadly you're not going to recover. You are going to die in the next year or 2 years, and a lot of it's down to cancer or similar illnesses. And I've had grandparents, and I've had people write to me about their own grandparents and their own relatives who've been in that position. And I know, speaking to my own family and my grandparents who both passed away in the last few years, they wanted a greater control over their lives. They wanted greater control over the end of their lives. And the current system where medicine is there to prolong life, which is great. We want to live a long time, but it doesn't necessarily enable people to choose when they're going to pass away. And it's a highly moral issue. It's cross-party. It goes across Conservative, Labour, Liberal, all the parties. I would want to see legislation and reforms brought in to give people a greater say over their own lives, and that when or if they are given a terminal diagnosis, they themselves can decide, do you know what, I've had enough now, and it's my time, to go, rather than the government saying, no, this is what we're going to impose on you. So again, it's a highly moral issue, and I get there are different views. There are religious views. There are different campaign groups with their own views on this. But certainly from the people I've spoken to and my own lived experience with family members, I think that would be something that I would be proud if we brought in some reforms in that space.
Peter Bedford, thank you very much.
Thank you.